Hello there, my name is Todd Rhoades, one of the co-founders at chemistrystaffing.com, and you are listening to the Healthy Church Staff Podcast. And this week we've been on a special short one-week series based around dealing with difficult people in ministry. We're talking about four different kinds of difficult people this week that if you're in ministry, you've probably already encountered. If not, you will very shortly, I assure you. We've talked so far about the dominator, and yesterday we talked about the dodger. Today we're going to talk about the debater. Now, the debater is unlike the dodger, who really doesn't say much of anything. The debater, like the dominator, talks a lot. They like to argue. They like to challenge everything, sometimes everything that's said or done. You might say something is red and they will argue to the death that it is green. They have a passion for truth and for justice, but they can also create division and discord among your team. So let's talk a little bit more about the debater. Okay, so this is just weird for me as I walk through this, because I can be both a dodger and a debater, which sounds like they're two totally different things, and a lot of times they are. For me, it depends on what setting I'm in. But I also have been blessed. I say I've been blessed half-heartedly. I've been blessed with what I call the justice gene, okay? Gene, G-E-N-E, not like a pair of jeans. I have the justice gene. So anytime I see that something might not be right or something might be a little off, my first tendency, if I feel comfortable. If I don't feel comfortable, I'm a dodger and won't say anything. But if I do feel comfortable in a group setting, I can very easily, if I'm not careful, become a debater, where I want to debate a lot of things. A debater can be a real challenge, whether it's for you one-on-one, somebody that you just spar with on everything, or maybe in a volunteer group, maybe a worship team setting or a small group setting, or even a staff setting. A debater can be a real challenge for you. It you might have some debaters on your staff. Somebody who wants to just feel like they're heard and that justice is done. So how can you as a staff member deal with difficult people? I'm speaking from experience here because I is one. How do you deal with debaters? First of all, you have to be respectful. You have to be firm as well. So here are some things you can try. First of all, can you differentiate between, let's say, primary and secondary issues? Not every topic, not every question is equally important or relevant to the discussion or the group setting or the goals. So you might be able to help the debater prioritize and focus on kind of the essentials, especially when it has to do with any kind of biblical, moral, or theological truth. A lot of times you can get sidetracked, and debaters can as well. They can take you off course. They can get sidetracked by minor or controversial issues. You can also just agree to disagree on some matters that are not essential for salvation or for fellowship. Here's a thing that I think really help you as you deal with debaters, whether you're doing it one-on-one or in a group. Acknowledge their perspective. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it. But debaters debate because they feel like they're not being heard, or they feel like they're not being understood, or that their views are just being dismissed or ignored. And you can show them that you respect them and appreciate their input by acknowledging their perspectives, summarizing their points, speak back to them what they just said so that they know that they were heard, and you can affirm some of the positive things about what they're saying, such as their desire to seek the truth or defend the faith. But a lot of times debaters, the thing that will enrage, again, I'm speaking out of experience, the thing that will enrage debaters the most is if they feel like they're not being listened to or not being heard, or that their perspective is just off the table to begin with. So make sure that you acknowledge their perspective and actually listen to them. Ask them at times, particularly when it's a theological issue or a biblical or a moral issue, ask them to put their money where their mouth is. Ask them to back up their claims with Scripture. The debater may have strong opinions or convictions, but they might not have always put those together with some solid biblical evidence for them. So you can challenge them in some cases. Hey, so where are you finding that in Scripture? Todd. How do you interpret the scripture in its context and in this situation? A lot of times don't be divisive or combative when you do this, but a lot of times that can help them to say, oh, I've not really thought about it that way. And here's the final thing for today with the debater. Sometimes you just have to take it offline, right? You have to go out back and have a couple words, particularly if you're in a tense board situation or you have a debater that's really just causing a ruckus in your group. Sometimes you just need to invite them to share their concerns with you privately. Sometimes the debater may have some personal or emotional reasons for the behavior. Maybe they're insecure, maybe they're frustrated, maybe they've been hurt in the past, maybe there's some resentment, maybe there's a lack of trust. But, and hear this, they may also have legitimate questions. They may raise some doubts that actually need to be addressed. Sometimes debaters have a point and you need to listen to them. But sometimes that needs to be done more privately than in a group setting. So don't call down somebody that's a debater in a group setting. You're just going to ask for trouble if you do that. Try and do so privately. Offer them some real pastoral care, some guidance. Befriend them, because a lot of times debaters feel a little isolated, a little off on their own, and a lot of times they are. A lot of times you can also help them to find some other outlets or resources, or maybe a book or a resource that can help, not to change their mind, but to give them. Debaters are usually gatherers of information, so if you've got some resources that can help them think through what they're debating, that can be helpful as well. You're always going to have at least one debater in every group. And in some ways, if you don't have debaters, the ball cannot move down the field. So that doesn't mean they're not at times difficult and make you grit your teeth a little bit. But hopefully this is some helpful ideas and thoughts for you as you deal with difficult people. Overall, I would say dealing with debaters, you just have to make sure that you allow them to be heard. Don't let them dominate. We talked about that a couple days ago. Go back and listen to that if you need to. But don't let them dominate. But at the same time, make sure that the debater is heard, and work with them one-on-one if you need to make sure that the relationship stays good and that there's no bitterness that arises. Okay, tomorrow, as we close out the week, we've already looked at the dominators, the dodgers, the debaters. Tomorrow, we're going to look at the drainers. Thanks to Chris Surratt for putting this together. Some really valuable insights that he wrote a couple years ago that I wanted to impart to you this week. So we'll talk to you tomorrow, and we'll talk about the drainer.